The night Piper Holt told the most dangerous man in the room to sit down and wait his turn, she wasn't trying to be brave. She was just tired. Tired of double shifts that blurred into each other. Tired of her feet aching before noon. Tired of men who walked into Harborview Grill like they owned the air inside it. She'd been carrying 4 plates and a basket of bread when he walked through the door, and she didn't even look up. That was the thing about working in a restaurant for 6 years. You developed a sense for the room. You knew without looking which tables needed water, which ones were about to ask for the bill, and which ones were going to make your night difficult. The second Nikolai Voss stepped through the front entrance, every server on the floor seemed to hold their breath at the same time. Piper felt it before she saw it, a shift in the air, a kind of collective stillness. She looked up. He was tall, the kind of tall that made a room feel smaller. Dark coat, no tie, a jaw that looked like it had been carved out of something expensive. 2 men flanked him at a respectful distance, not bodyguards exactly, but not bodyguards either. The hostess, a 20-year-old named Britt who never rattled, was visibly rattling. Piper had heard the name Voss before. Everyone in this part of Vancouver had. You didn't grow up in the East End without knowing which names you didn't say too loudly. The Voss family ran import logistics. That was the official story. The unofficial one was considerably more complicated. She went back to delivering her plates. "Excuse me." The voice came from directly behind her, low, accustomed to being answered immediately. Piper set down the last plate, the halibut, table 7, smiled at the couple who'd ordered it, and then turned around. Nikolai Voss was standing 2 feet away from her, looking at her the way people look at a traffic light that won't change. "We'll need that table," he said, nodding toward the foretop by the window. The one she'd just cleared and reset. The one that had a reservation card on it that said Ellison 7:30. "That table's reserved," Piper said. "Unreserve it." She looked at him for a moment, not with hostility, just with the particular patience of someone who has explained the same thing to many different people over many years. "Sir, I don't have the authority to move another guest's reservation. If you'd like, I can check with the manager about availability, or I can put you on a priority wait list. We typically have a table open up within. Do you know who I am?" And there it was. That sentence. Piper had heard it a dozen times from a dozen different men, and every single time it meant the same thing. "I am someone who has never been told no by someone in your position, and I'd like to keep that record intact." "I do," she said, because she wasn't a liar, and that table is still reserved. The 2 men flanking him went very still. Britt, still at the hostess stand, had stopped pretending to look at her screen. Half the dining room had gone quiet in that subtle way where everyone is listening but trying to appear like they aren't. Nikolai Voss looked at her. She looked back. "Your name," he said. "Piper, Piper." He said it like he was filing it somewhere. "I'll remember that." "I hope you also remember that the waitlist is complimentary," she said, and turned back to her tables. She heard one of his men exhale, almost a laugh, quickly smothered. She didn't turn around. She picked up an empty glass from table 9 and walked toward the service station, and her hands were completely steady, which surprised even her. The manager, a soft-spoken man named Richard who'd been running Harborview for 11 years, appeared at her elbow approximately 45 seconds later. "Piper," his voice was pained. "I know," she said. I know who he is, Richard. Then you know I need to move the Ellisons, yes." She handed him the empty glass. "Tell them dessert is on the house. The chocolate lava cake. They'll forgive anything for the lava cake." Richard looked at her with the expression of a man who was both grateful and horrified. "You couldn't have just." "No," she said simply. "I couldn't have." She didn't watch where they seated Nikolai Voss. She had 4 other tables, a side section, and a kitchen that was running 12 minutes behind on the salmon. She didn't have time to think about dark coats or reserved tables or names filed away like promises. She thought about her brother instead, the way she always did when she needed to stay grounded. Callum, 17 years old, currently asleep on the pull-out couch in her apartment because their mother's place had become uninhabitable in ways that Piper was still trying to legally untangle. Callum, who needed new winter boots and whose science fair project was due in 2 weeks, and who had 3 months ago gotten tangled up with the wrong people in a way that Piper was also still trying to quietly, carefully, desperately unravel. That was why she worked double shifts. That was why she didn't quit when the nights were bad. That was why she smiled at difficult tables and stayed late to help close, and never, not once, let her hands shake. She was almost through the dinner rush when the server from the front section found her. "Table by the window wants you specifically," he said, jerking his thumb over his shoulder. "Asked for you by name." She already knew which table. Nikolai Voss had ordered, simply, a steak, a glass of red she recognized as their second most expensive bottle, sparkling water. His 2 companions had ordered nothing. They sat slightly back from the table like punctuation marks. "You wanted me," Piper said. "I wanted to apologize," he said. That surprised her. She was good at not showing surprise, but something must have moved across her face because the corner of his mouth shifted slightly. "I was rude," he said. "Earlier, you were," she agreed. He paused, chose a different word. "I was rude," he repeated. "That's all." She looked at him for a moment. Up close in the warm light of the dining room, he looked younger than she'd expected, or not younger, more tired. There was something underneath the controlled surface of him that reminded her, uncomfortably, of herself. The particular exhaustion of someone who has been performing competence for a very long time. "Apology accepted," she said. "Can I get you anything else?" "Sit down. I'm working. For 5 minutes. Mr. Voss," she said it with the same level patience she'd used at the hostess stand. "I have 6 tables. I'm not able to sit down." He looked at her for a long moment. Something in his expression shifted, not softening exactly, more like recalibrating. "Fine," he said, "then stand." He reached into his coat and set a business card on the table face down. "If you're ever not working." She didn't pick it up. "Have a good evening," she said, and walked back to table 3, who needed more bread. She did not pick up the card. She was proud of that for exactly 4 days, right up until the moment everything fell apart. It was a Tuesday when Piper found out exactly how much trouble her brother was in. She'd been at the restaurant for an early shift when Callum called, or tried to call. The call dropped twice. When she finally reached him, he was at a gas station 3 kilometers from their apartment, his voice doing the tight, controlled thing it did when he was trying not to panic. "I'm fine," he said immediately, which meant he wasn't. "Where are you?" "The shell on boundary. Piper, I need you to listen. Are you hurt?" "No, They came to the apartment. 2 guys. Looking for Dad." Piper went cold in a way that had nothing to do with the walk-in fridge she was standing next to. Their father, Graham Holt, had been absent for 8 years in the physical sense, and present in every other way that mattered. Bills, debts, damaged relationships, the particular kind of damage that accumulated quietly over years. He'd apparently borrowed money from people who collected their debts with interest and implied menace. "Go inside the gas station," Piper said. "Tell the attendant you feel sick and ask to wait inside. Stay where people can see you. I'm coming. Piper? Callum. Go inside. Now." She was already pulling off her apron. She drove faster than she should have. She kept Callum on the phone, listening to the tinny sound of convenience store music in the background, the small normalcy of it grounding her, while her brain ran calculations at a speed that didn't feel quite human. She needed money, real money, not her savings, which were built for emergencies like rent gaps and dental bills, not for clearing whatever her father owed to whoever he owed it to. She needed it quickly. She needed it in a way that didn't involve the police, because Callum's involvement, however peripheral, was the kind of thing that could derail everything she'd been quietly working to protect. She collected her brother from the gas station. She drove them both to her apartment. She made tea she didn't drink and sat across from Callum at her kitchen table and listened to the full story for the first time, because Callum had apparently been trying to protect her from it, and had now run out of road to do that on. The number their father owed was not large enough to be dramatic. That was the insidious thing about it. It was the size of a problem that felt manageable until it suddenly wasn't. After Callum fell asleep, Piper sat at her kitchen table for a long time. Then she got up, found the pocket of her work apron, and unfolded a business card she'd told herself she wasn't going to keep. She didn't call that night. She turned it over in her hands for a long time, studying the clean, spare typography. Just a name and a number, no company name, no title. Nikolai Voss. She called in the morning. He picked up on the second ring. "Piper," he said. She hated that he recognized her voice. She hated it more that she'd somehow known he would. "I need to talk to you," she said. "Not because I want anything from you. I need information. I understand you might know people who—" She stopped, recalibrated. "I have a situation, and I think you might know who I'd need to talk to in order to resolve it cleanly." A pause. "How did you sleep?" "Excuse me." "I'm asking how you slept. You sound like you did, Mr. Voss." "Nikolai, I don't need pleasantries. Tell me the situation," she told him, quickly, efficiently, without embellishment. She gave him the names her brother had mentioned, the rough number, the timeline. She had the strange sensation as she spoke of handing something fragile to someone she didn't fully trust and watching them hold it with more care than she'd expected. When she finished, there was silence for a moment. "These men," he said, "they're not independent. I assumed. You know whose network they run through." She didn't answer. She'd had her suspicions. "Come have coffee with me," he said. "This afternoon. I'll explain what you're actually dealing with." "I'm not coming to wherever it is you." "There's a place called Lightwell on Canby," he said. "Public. Busy. You can sit facing the door if it makes you feel better." It did make her feel better, and she resented that he'd said it. 2:00, she said, and hung up first. The coffee was genuinely excellent. She was not going to tell him that. He arrived exactly at 2, without his companions, which surprised her. He was in a dark sweater and looked, somehow less like a threat and more like a complicated person, which she found considerably more unsettling. He told her what she was dealing with. Clearly, without condescension, with the kind of precision that suggested he was accustomed to briefing people who needed to act on information quickly. The men who'd come to her apartment were connected to a network that had been expanding into the East End for the past year. Her father's debt was small, but it had been sold. Debts like that often were passed up a chain until they reached someone who collected differently. "Can it be settled?" she asked. "Yes, through legitimate means." He looked at her. "Define legitimate payment. Direct, in full. With a receipt, metaphorically speaking, that they won't come back, possibly," he said. "It depends on who currently holds the paper. Can you find out?" He was quiet for a moment. "Why would I do that?" She met his eyes. "Because I'm asking, and because I think you're bored." Something crossed his face, not quite amusement, more like recognition. "And what would I get in return for this favor?" he asked. "Nothing," she said. "Unless you want someone to continue telling you no when you're being unreasonable, in which case you apparently can't find that anywhere else, and I could put a dollar value on it." He looked at her for a long moment. The coffee shop noise moved around them, espresso machines, chairs scraping, the low hum of 20 separate conversations. "I'll find out who holds the paper," he said. "Come back tomorrow, same time." She nodded, picked up her cup, drank the excellent coffee, without telling him it was excellent. "Piper." She looked up. "The kid at the gas station," he said. "Your brother, he's fine?" She blinked. She hadn't told him about the gas station specifically, only the broad situation. "How do you know about the gas station?" His expression didn't change. "Same time tomorrow." She walked out of the coffee shop with the distinct and uncomfortable feeling that she had just agreed to something much larger than she'd understood, and that Nikolai Voss had known that from the beginning. She didn't sleep well. She went to work, served 40 covers, smiled at people who didn't deserve it, and turned over possibilities in her mind the way you turn over worry stones. Not to solve anything, just to feel the shape of it. She thought about the way he'd said the gas station, specific, casually, like a man who checked on things as a matter of routine and found it unremarkable to mention. The thought should have frightened her. It did a little, but underneath that, and she didn't fully understand this until much later, it also steadied her, in a strange, sideways way, because it meant that whatever was happening with her father's debt, Nikolai Voss already knew about it, and he'd called her back to the table anyway. She showed up the next day at 2:00. He was already there, same table, 2 coffees already ordered. She noticed the one in front of her empty seat was black. He'd paid attention to how she drank it yesterday. She sat down without mentioning it. "The debt was sold twice," he said, no preamble. "Current holder is someone I know. It can be settled. The number is higher than what your father originally borrowed. Fees, interest, the cost of being passed up the chain." He named the figure. She kept her face still. "That's possible," she said, which was true only if she wiped out entirely what she'd been saving for Callum's college fund. "Can it be settled in a way that ends it completely?" "Yes. No future contact with my brother. That can be arranged. And with my father, if he's still alive somewhere." She paused. "It's not relevant to me. He made his choices. But I need to know that settling this doesn't create an obligation." Nikolai looked at her steadily. "You're settling someone else's debt with no expectation of being repaid or thanked. He's my father. He wasn't much of one." She looked at him sharply. "You checked up on me," she said. "It wasn't a question. I check on everyone who calls me." She should have been angry. She registered the anger, held it, and then set it down because she didn't have room for it right now. "Is the information accurate?" "It appears to be." "Then yes. He wasn't much of one. And I'm still settling his debt, because my brother needs it to be over, and Callum is." Her voice went steady in the way it did when she was working hard to keep it there. "Callum is the part of my family that still has a future, and I'm not going to let our father's choices cancel that out." Nikolai was quiet for a moment. "I'll arrange the settlement," he said. She blinked. "I didn't ask you to. I'm not doing it for your father. I'm doing it because you asked me a question yesterday, and I'm answering it." He picked up his coffee. "You'll repay the amount to me. Reasonable timeline, no interest. I don't want to owe you. You owe me a debt with a fixed number and no additional terms," he said. "That's considerably better than the alternative." She looked at him across the small cafe table. "Why?" He looked back at her. "Same time next week," he said. "I'll have confirmation." He was frustrating. He was also, she was beginning to understand, doing her a genuine favor, structured carefully so it didn't look like one. She drank her coffee. Didn't, paid for her own. The confirmation came in 5 days, not 7. He texted her, a number she hadn't saved, but recognized. A single line, resolved. Your brother won't be contacted again. She stared at the message for a long time. Then she typed, thank you, sent it. Immediately felt like she'd handed something over. His reply came an hour later, the lava cake. Is it actually worth it? She frowned at her phone, then remembered she'd told the Ellisons the lava cake was on the house. He'd been close enough to hear, or someone had told him. She typed yes. Don't order the creme brulee, though. Kitchen oversells it 3 minutes past, then noted. She didn't analyze why she was smiling. The next 2 months moved the way complicated things move when you're in the middle of them. Not smoothly, but not without momentum. She paid back a portion of what she owed him every 2 weeks, transferred to an account he provided. No discussion required. She ran into him twice at the restaurant. He was seated in her section both times, which felt deliberate, and she served him with the same professional distance she applied to everyone, which she suspected amused him. He ordered tap water once. She almost dropped her pen. You remembered, she said, before she could stop herself. You'll drink tap. You don't deserve the bubbles, he said, and the way he said it, like he was quoting something back to her, made her realize he'd heard that. He'd heard her say that to someone, or about someone, at some point. He paid attention in a way that was either flattering or alarming. Probably both. I didn't say that to you, she said. No, he said. You have better manners with the people you're annoyed by. She brought him tap water and didn't smile until she was back in the service corridor where no one could see. The problem, or the next problem, arrived 6 weeks later in the form of a man named Derek Ashworth. Ashworth was a property developer who'd been trying to acquire the building that housed Harbor View Grill, along with several adjacent properties, for a development project that would have displaced the restaurant and roughly 40 other small businesses. He came in for lunch on a Thursday and sat at the bar, and Piper overheard him on his phone describing the tenant situation as easily managed. She didn't do anything about it. It wasn't her building. What she did do was mention it, that evening, in a text to Nikolai. A casual observation, no request attached. She'd fallen into a habit of that, brief exchanges about nothing in particular. She hadn't fully examined why. His reply came quickly. I know Ashworth. He's overextended. The development won't proceed. She typed, how do you know? Because I own 2 of the adjacent lots he needs. She stared at her phone. You own property on Hastings Street. Several properties. Why? The restaurant is on Hastings Street. A pause that lasted longer than his usual pauses. Then, I know. She put her phone down, picked it up again. Did you start coming to Harborview because no, he replied, immediately this time. I came because someone told me the food was good. I kept coming because of other reasons. She knew which other reasons. She didn't type that she knew. The tenants will be fine, he sent. Ashworth will find another site. She didn't thank him. She put her phone down and stared at the ceiling of her apartment for a while, and thought about the particular complexity of being protected by someone you hadn't asked to protect you, by someone who had somehow become present in your life in a way that was neither requested nor entirely unwelcome. She thought about Callum, who had met Nikolai once, briefly, accidentally, at the restaurant, and had come home saying he seemed like someone you'd want on your side, which was extremely perceptive for a 17-year-old, and also deeply inconvenient for Piper's efforts to maintain appropriate emotional distance. She thought about the fact that she'd paid back 2/3 of what she owed, and that when it was fully paid, there would be no practical reason for them to be in contact, and that she had spent more time than she wanted to admit thinking about that. The conversation that changed things happened on a Sunday. She'd been off shift. She'd agreed to meet him. Coffee again, different place this time. A spot near the water that he'd suggested and that turned out to be the kind of place that felt like it was designed for difficult conversations. Something about the light off the harbor. He told her something she hadn't known, that the network her father had borrowed from had been planning to use the debt differently than she'd understood. Not just collection, but leverage. Callum's peripheral involvement had been flagged. The settlement hadn't just ended the debt. It had, in the way these things worked, removed a piece from a board she hadn't known she was playing on. She listened to all of this with the stillness she'd spent years cultivating. You knew more than you told me, she said. Yes, why didn't you tell me everything at the beginning? He was quiet for a moment. Because you would have refused help if you'd understood the full scope. You would have found another way, a worse way. She looked at him. That's not your decision to make. No, he agreed. It wasn't. He didn't apologize. He also didn't look away. I made a choice that I believed was right. I understand that you disagree. I don't disagree that you helped. I disagree that you decided what I was allowed to know about my own situation. Yes, he said again. Simple. Without deflection. She looked at the water for a moment. The light was doing the complicated thing it did in Vancouver in late autumn, grey and gold at the same time. "I need to know," she said, "that if there's something that concerns me or my brother, you tell me directly. Even if you think I won't like it, all right. That's not a negotiation point. It's a condition." "I understand." She turned back to him. "Why does it matter to you? What happens to us?" He looked at her with the full weight of his attention, which was a considerable thing to be on the receiving end of. "You know why. I'd like to hear you say it." A long pause. The harbor moved. Somewhere a seagull was having strong feelings about something. "Because you told the most dangerous man in the room to wait his turn," he said. "And you weren't afraid. And I have spent a significant amount of my life surrounded by people who are afraid of me." He paused. "It's lonely, actually." She looked at him for a long time. "That's either the saddest thing I've ever heard," she said, "or the best line anyone has ever used on me." "It's the truth," he said. "Those aren't mutually exclusive." She thought about that. She thought about Callum, safe. About the restaurant still open on Hastings Street. About 2/3 of a debt repaid and a man who ordered tap water because she'd said it once in a room he happened to be standing in. "I have one payment left," she said. "I know, after that, he said. "You'll owe me nothing. If you'd like to have coffee with me without a ledger attached to it, I would like that. If you wouldn't, I'll respect that too." She pulled her coat tighter. "The coffee here is mediocre," she said. "It is," he agreed. "I know a better place. Of course you do. Is that a yes?" She stood up, looked at him one more time. A complicated man who had walked into her restaurant like he owned the room and been told very firmly that he did not. Who had, against what she imagined were all his instincts, listened. "Same time next week," she said, and walked toward the water.